Before we get into today's video, I just want to say two things really quickly. Firstly, there is currently a sale on the EA app and there's some really good packs that are included in it, and if you do end up getting your hands on any packs, you can still use my creator code. If you enter code Jessicapie at checkout, it helps directly support me and my channel and all the builds that I make, as I do earn a small commission fee from your purchase. It isn't a discount code, but it's just a free way to help support the channel and future videos, and I know I say this every single time I mention my creator code, but I did just want to say a really big thank you to everyone that has used my code in the past, or if you're planning on using it in the future. It's just really lovely for you to think of me when you buy your Sims packs. But secondly, thanks to EA Creator Network, I am hosting a giveaway for the 3 new kits. It's 1 kit per winner, but if you do want to enter, all you got to do is comment down below which kit you would like to win, and then pop me a message on Instagram with your YouTube username or YouTube handle, and then again which pack you like the look of, and that way I can message you if you do win. But the giveaway closes on Friday the 9th of April, and it's open to everyone, so console, PC, whatever. But because I said all of this, I did just want to say a big thank you to the EA Creator Network for sponsoring this section of the video. But anyway, let's go build a Welsh farm. Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome back to another Sims 4 speedrunning video, or welcome to the channel if you are new here. So in today's video, I'm going to be building the world of Ravenwood, which is the world that we got from the expansion pack The Sims 4 Life and Death, and I'm going to be building a Welsh Family Farm, but using 2 of the new kits that came out yesterday, which was The Sims 4 Restoration Workshop Kit and also The Sims 4 Kitchen Clutter Kit. So this house ends up having 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, and it's built on a 64 by 64 lot. Now, like I just said, yesterday was new kit day, and in total we got 3 new kits for the game. We've got the 2 build and buy kits, but then there is also a Creator Sim kit, which I believe is meant to be called Golden Years, and it focuses on like elder style clothing, which love that. We definitely use some more of that in the game. But pretty much this week I knew straight away what I wanted to build, and that was some sort of like little Welsh family farm. Now this past weekend I was in Northern Wales only for a few days, but basically when I was there I just couldn't help myself but look at all the different like little farms and tucked away cottages that are kind of secluded in the Welsh countryside, and I was just getting so inspired, and I was just thinking the whole time I was there that I wanted to basically sit down and recreate something like that in the game. And then when I heard about the new kits that were coming out, the Kitchen Clutter Kit and then also the Restoration Workshop Kit, I just thought that they would work so perfectly for this build. And so yeah, this week that is exactly what I did. I just tried to create some sort of Welsh feeling farm in the game, and I'm really happy with this build, and so yeah, I really hope you like it. But anyway, moving on from that and getting on and talking a little bit more about the build itself and also what I'm doing right now. So as you can see, I've already figured out the main structure for the build. I've already figured out what wallpaper I'm going to go for, and straight away as well I knew from the get-go what windows I wanted to go for. I'm just currently coming in and figuring out how the floor plan on the inside is going to look. Now for the actual house itself, I based this off a real life house that I saw nestled in the Welsh countryside, because pretty much where I was staying was around the Snowdonia National Park, I think is the official name, because this past weekend I decided to climb Mount Snowdon, which was fun, a little bit hard but rewarding to say the least. But pretty much the way that I actually got eventually to doing this build is where I parked my car to then go and get like a little park and ride bus at the bottom of the mountain. There was this one particular house kind of opposite the car park, and I was looking at it and I was thinking that is so beautiful, and it was just kind of like the main, like the house, if you want to put it that way, that really inspired this build. What I'll do is I'll go on to Google Street View for you and I'll take a picture of what the house looks like and kind of like put it on the screen so you can kind of get a general gist of the house in real life. Not a clue who lives there, really going to be weird if the person that lives there ends up watching this video, but to me it just looks so beautiful, kind of like in the middle of a field. There's loads of hills around it. And the thing is as well, when I was driving home from Wales, I was already kind of like mapping out this build in my mind, and straight away I knew the lot that I wanted to build it on, which was the 64 by 64 in the world of Ravenwood, just because just behind the lot itself are all these like beautiful hills, and to me it is the most like Welsh landscape that we've got into the game. And so yeah, from the get-go I'd already planned out where the build was going to be, and I kind of had a rough idea of what the build was going to look like, and I was just so inspired for this build. I will say though, and kind of admit, I've never been inside of a Welsh family farm or even like a Welsh house, but in terms of the interior decorations, I kind of wanted it to feel like it was quite an old house, kind of like nestled in the fields in my head, Wales, but in reality it's in Ravenwood, which I never built here. The world that we got from the Life and Death expansion pack, I think I built here once, and it was when the expansion pack first came out. Other than that, never touch it. But this little like countryside section of the world is really beautiful, and so I think going forward for my save file, I might make all of the houses in this neighbourhood to be all different kind of farms. There is kind of like farm stuff almost like nestled into the landscape, so it kind of does make sense. But where I'm actually building this 64 by 64 lot, by default it's empty. There is nothing there, and so maybe if you're looking to fill up your worlds, then you could pop it down into your game. But anyway, moving on from that and actually getting back and talking about the build. Currently, I'm just coming in and adding in almost like little details onto the building. I just added kind of like I was about to say hose pipe then, but it's not a hose pipe. Some sort of like drain pipe that I imagine the bath water would like drain out of or something. But in terms of the space around the build, where I'm building on such a big lot, I kind of want it to feel like the house itself is quite small. Like, it's not big, I must admit, it's quite small, it's quite cosy, but I like it. I feel like for gameplay, it'll be really nice to have such a small house, but then also your garden is huge, and so if you ever need an extension, you're sorted. But in terms of the actual space around it, I wanted it to feel like the house was nestled between some fields, and so the way that I approached kind of like the decoration, the landscape, I sectioned it off into my mind separate types of field for a farm. Now, going back to the house that I based this off from, I saw it in real life, but I couldn't remember exactly how it looked, and so I did pop onto Google Street View and just basically put my little street person in the car park and then wandered over to where I saw the initial house. But on Google Street View, there is sheeps in the field in front of this house, which, very Welsh. There is so many sheep in Wales. I know I have been to Wales before, but it's still bizarre to me because if you ever do go to Snowdon and climb Mount Snowdon, you will be very high up in the air and you will look to your left and there will just be a sheep there. Don't know how they can climb that high, but there is literally sheep everywhere. And so again, coming into this build, I was so inspired because with the Sims 4 Horse Ranch expansion pack, we have baby sheep and baby goats, and so I placed down so many different sheep in this build to kind of make it feel as almost authentic as possible. But yeah, kind of like the first field on the bottom right hand side ends up being the sheep field, and there is so many sheep in there. I also ended up placing down kind of like a little pond section, and then I also did make a house for the sheep to sleep in. Now by default, there's not technically a bed for different baby sheep and baby goats to sleep in, but with the hay bed that we got from the Horse Ranch expansion pack, it's normally meant to be where horses sleep, but I've noticed throughout gameplay that baby sheep and baby goats will just kind of tend to sleep in that area, and so I merged in a live edit. It's kind of like a wooden shacky kind of thing. It's really cool. It's got a hay roof, but I basically played around the tool mod and I made it so it's going to be functional. And then yeah, on the inside I made it so baby sheep can sleep in there. I did also provide them with some feeders so they can also feed themselves, and then there's like a little pond in front of it. But then behind the sheep field there is a tractor field, which I ended up placing down a live edit tractor in there. And then I must admit, that field doesn't really have any gameplay because where I'm building, it's such a big lot, and I'm thinking for actual gameplay, if I was to place down interactable planters for your Sims to grow fruit and vegetables in all the different spaces, your Sims would literally they'd never sleep, they'd never eat, they'd never use the loo, like they wouldn't be able to do anything because it's such a big lot. And so I decided to make the field behind the sheep field into kind of like a fake farming field, place down a little tractor in there, and then I also placed down some live edit farming crops. It goes without saying, but of course if you wanted to, you definitely delete the fake crops and then add in some like garden planters or maybe like farming patches if you did want to extend the farming field. But there is a farming field, I'll get to that in a second, but the farming field itself, you've got a few planters in there, and so I don't really think if you actually want your Sims to have any sort of life outside tending for crops, you're going to need to extend it. But yeah, there is kind of like a little fake farming field, and then next to that there is a chicken area. And so I was thinking, where I'm building a farm, I have to have some space for some chickens, and so there's kind of like a little chicken section, but I purposely placed it kind of like by the back end of the house, because I'm thinking that the Sims that live here, everything that they eat, they have grown themselves. And I was also thinking, well, in terms of eggs, it'd be really lovely if your Sims could kind of go out into the chicken coop every single morning, collect the eggs, and then make breakfast with them. But then I was thinking, where it is, again, such a big lot, I don't want the chicken coop to be a million miles away. Your Sims, it will be afternoon by the time they get round to the chicken coop, and so I purposely place the chicken area quite near to the back door of the kitchen, so your Sims of a morning, they can just, pop out there, collect some eggs, and then maybe make some scrambled eggs and bacon or toast or whatever. But then next to that, there is kind of like a little section of the garden for Sims themselves. I placed down a little barbecue section, also ends up being like a washing line, and then also I think a hopscotch, because for one of the bedrooms there is a kid living in this house, and so I kind of wanted them to have something to do in the back garden. But then next to that is where the actual farmer's fields is. Over there I end up placing down, no joke, probably about 30 different planters for oversized crops in the game. And so when I said if you wanted to extend the farming fields, definitely can do, but honestly I feel like you've got your work cut out for you, because farming in The Sims is hard, and like it's very time consuming. I really struggle to get my Sims to have a life outside of owning a farm, if they do eventually end up living on one. But yeah, there ends up being like 30 odd planters out there. Also pop down a woodworking table and then a flower arranging table, and then in front of that is the cow field, which you can see I have placed down a little live edit building, and then currently there is 4 cows awkwardly standing in front of the building. Now, for this build, I didn't want to use the default animal shed that we got from the Cottage Living expansion pack, because although it is nice for certain builds, I knew coming into this build, I didn't want to have like 3 or 4 multiple animal sheds kind of like cluttered in one field. And so you can see the way that I've kind of approached it is I placed down the initial sheds that I wanted to use, and then I end up sizing them down really small enough so you can't really see it, but still big enough so if you wanted to, you could still interact with the cows. And then I end up merging in some grass kind of like over the little like animal sheds, and then that way the cows are in the field but they're not attached to the animal shed, or at least they don't look like they're attached to the animal shed. In my mind, when I was building that little like live edit building, it kind of situated at the back of the field, is where they would go to sleep of a night time. Of course it doesn't actually happen, but I was just like praying pretend. But yeah, if you're wondering, the way that the cows interact with each other, it's just like normal. Even though I've sized down the animal shed, still fully functional. You will still need to clean it, by the way. Don't think that you've got out of it easy. The way that you basically interact with the animal shed is you zoom into the grass. Like I said, I sized it down small enough so you can't really see it, but if you actually zoom in, you can click on it. But you just click on it, you can clean the shed, you can refill the feeder, and then you can still interact with the cows as normal. It's just kind of like a nice little handy way around not having the default animal shed sometimes, because like I said, even though it is nice, sometimes in particular builds you don't want to use the default one, you want to kind of like switch it up a little bit. But yeah, there is also a cow field, and so I was thinking the Sims that live in this house, every single morning they would go outside, and alongside getting their eggs from the chicken coop, they would also get some fresh milk to drink. But either way, moving over, as you can see, I'm now coming in and I've started to try and terrain manipulation the sheep field. Now, 2 things I took away from my trip to Wales, and please, there is no offence intended here if you are Welsh. You live in a beautiful country, but it's very hilly and there's a lot of sheep. And so coming into this build, I knew that I wanted to mess around with terrain manipulation and make it look like sections of this build were kind of like nestled into a hill landscape almost. And so yeah, I purposely made it so one of the fence lines kind of goes up in kind of like a bit of a semicircle motion to kind of easily identify from the get-go, that's a hill, oh wait, there's sheep there. And then in my mind it kind of gives kind of like, oh, what's the word? My English teacher will be mad at me because I can't think of it, but connotations. Is that the right word? I don't know. I just feel like from the get-go, when I see a hill and when I see sheep, I just think Welsh. And so, yeah, I purposely made it so there was going to be some little hilly bits. But over there, I just finished up the sheep shed, if you want to call it that, or like the sheep's house, which that live edit building, if you're curious, it's from the Life and Death expansion pack, and you can find it in this like environment, in this neighborhood of Ravenwood. And so coming into this build, I knew that I wanted to use it, but I tested to see if my Sims could go inside of it, and I realised that my Sims couldn't go in. You know, sometimes when you click on the floor and you click go here, my Sims couldn't do it inside of the building. And so coming into actually furnishing, I was thinking, okay, well, I do want that to be in part of the build because it's already in the natural landscapes. I also want the sheep to have somewhere that they could go to sleep overnight time. And so basically the way that I got it to be functional is I built pretty much a rectangle, and then it moved onto the level above, placed down the little like hay sheddy kind of thing, and then I leveled it down using the tool mod. And basically where I elevated it down, it still looks like it's on the floor, but technically it's on the floor above. But then that way my Sims could still interact with it. It's just a really nice workaround using the tool mod, which, by the way, if you're curious and you play on maybe PlayStation, Xbox, or if you're someone that doesn't have the tool mod and you just, you're completely vanilla in terms of no mods or CC in the game, you can still download this build and that will still work. I built this house using the tool mod to help me kind of like manipulate objects and elevate things and rotate things and stuff, but in terms of actual gameplay, you don't need it to function. It will still work as normal. But yeah, overnight time when I was playtesting, the sheep would actually go in the little sheep shed and they would go sleep. I will say, default, the sheep are quite small in the game, and so I did size them up. Don't worry, the sheep still function. You can still interact with the sheep, you can still feed them, you can still, I think you can like shear them and you can still chat to them and stuff. But where I sized them up, I did notice when I was playtesting that when they go to sleep, they kind of look like they're all cuddling in kind of like a big circle in a way, because where I sized them up and they're not their initial like animation size, yeah, their fur was kind of like next to one another. But it's cute because it does actually look like the sheep were like pals, like they were mates and they were just sleeping to maybe warmth. Maybe it's cold out there. Wales does get quite cold, and so yeah, maybe the sheep like to cuddle of an evening. I don't know, it was just something that I noticed in playtesting, and I actually didn't mind because I just thought it just made it feel a little bit more cute. But also in that little shed I placed down some feeders, and so the sheep, morning, evening, lunchtime, whenever, can also feed from them, and so yeah, they'll never go hungry. But either way, behind that, this is that little fake farming field that I was talking about. So all of these different lettuces that I placed down, these are not interactable. It's purely just for like the aesthetics purposes. If you fancy, of course, you can delete these, you can replace them with flowers patches, or if you want, you could also replace it with maybe like a horse area. Now, this is something that I did debate when I came in and I started filming, because I was thinking, do I want horses to be attached to this lot, or do I just want it to be actual farm land in terms of like it's a working class farm, like the milk that the Sims don't drink, they end up selling to maybe like the local farmers market, and the eggs, same thing, they'll end up sending them again with like the produce and stuff. And so I was thinking you could definitely place down a horse stable, like a horsey house in that little section, definitely space for it. But I then was thinking, well, your Sims have already got their work cut out in terms of the amount of space that there is on this build. You've got chicken coops, you've got multiple different like farming clumps for oversized vegetables, you've got the cows, you've got the baby sheep, like you've got your work cut out. And for the idea for the family that I imagine living here, I imagined it was a single dad and he has an infant and then also a child. Bless his heart, he wouldn't be able to cope. I mean, you've got to think, you've got the baby sheep, which they don't really require that much attention, but they do need a little bit of loving. But then alongside the baby sheep, you've got all the chickens in the little chicken coop area over here. But then also alongside the chickens, you've got about 30 plus farmers patches for overgrown vegetables. That's a hassle within itself. But then also, you've got 3 cows in your front garden. And so I was thinking, well, realistically, this Sim is going to have his work cut out for him. And so I was thinking, you know what, I'm not going to make it so there is a horse's stables. But again, feel free, if you want to download this build and you want it to be almost like an ultimate family farm that has horses and cows, and maybe you want to switch out the cows and maybe you want a llama, you can definitely just reshift it about, like rejig it to suit your personal gameplay and like your personal preferences. But yeah, for this build I decided to not include horses, but it's always an option that you can add. But either way, getting back to the build, as you can see, I finished up the little chicken coop area. Hopefully you can see what I mean by like I purposely placed it quite close to the back of the house, purely just for like gameplay purposes. Now, when I was building this, I didn't assign this lot to have any like lot traits or lot challenges, but something that I'm currently playing through in my own personal gameplay is I've basically got a sim, and she is a rags to riches farm, if you want to put it that way, and she's got a chicken coop on her little like farmland area. But the thing is, I assigned it so there was wild foxes that would come to the farm, just to add a little bit more depth to my gameplay and just to make it a little bit, to be honest, difficult, because it's annoying, but it is also a little bit fun sometimes. But I have realised that with having wild foxes, you kind of need to be quite close to your chicken coop, because you'll get a notification saying, oh, look out, there's a wild fox that's looking at your ends, or something along the lines of that. And so then your sim has to run outside, and you have to go and shoo the fox away. If you want to, you can get a good relationship with the fox and stuff. But yeah, in terms of gameplay, I was thinking, if you did want to play with wild foxes on the lot, then if you're quite close to the chickens as a whole, it'll just be a lot quicker shooing the fox away. But then also going back to, in the morning, if your sims want to go and get fresh eggs for their breakfast, they don't have to wait until the afternoon by the time they get back to the kitchen, because it's just quite accessible from the back door. But alongside that, over here, this is where the actual farming fields are. Now, I wasn't joking when I said I placed down about 30 different vegetable patches. There are so many different spaces for multiple different overgrown crops. I have already pre-planted them, more so just to test the playability of them, even though I knew they were going to work, because there's nothing really interrupting how they should work. But I have pre-planted them. I placed down mushrooms, lettuce, pumpkin, watermelon, and aubergine, which I'm pretty sure they're all the different oversized crops in the game. But yeah, if you do download this build, they will be pre-planted. Feel free to delete them. I'm also just did it to make sure that, you know, they were actually going to be functional. But something else that I did want to mention before I move on into the inside is on the exterior, you would have seen that in different spaces I use live edit fences to kind of like section the build off. And for this build, I wanted it to be as easy as possible for gameplay, like all my builds. And so you might have noticed in some sections, if I had like a stone wall, I'd purposely make it so underneath it there was going to be a real life fence to kind of section it off properly, so you know the sheep don't go wandering and stuff. But when it came around to the live edit fences, I did notice in playtesting that the baby sheeps were running about everywhere. Don't worry, I have since fixed it. And you know that little sheepy field that I made at the start? Basically, the sheep, if you want to, will stay in that field even though there is live edit fences around it. In like the official back garden section, which I just pretty much finished up, I don't know if you would have noticed, but I placed down this one particular bush, and it's just from the Sims 4 base game. You can find it in the live edit menu. But basically with this particular bush, for some reason, and it is quite annoying, but in this case it was actually really handy, but for some reason if you place things a little bit too close to it, your Sims don't like it and they won't interact with the object. And so when I was playtesting and I was noticing that my baby sheep were going left, right and centre, they were going into the village, they were speaking, they weren't speaking, but they were interacting with like the locals and stuff. I was thinking, this is absolutely chaos. What I did in the end, I got that bush that I placed down into different sections of the back garden. I sized it down really small as I could pretty much make it, to make it kind of look like a little bit of grass. And then where the live edit fences was, I then went around and individually placed all these different bushes. Again, it looks like grass in the game, but in reality it's actually just a bush sized down really small. But then that way, where Sims don't like going around the object, it kind of acts like a fence or a wall in the game by default. Like, even though it's just literally a bush, Sims don't like interacting with it, they'll go around it. It's kind of like a bit of a blocker. Normally it's quite annoying when you place it down, you know, like in little back gardens and stuff, but in this case it was so handy because yeah, I basically ended up sizing them down around kind of like the live edit fence line, and then that way baby sheeps will not exit the field. The rest of the field has kind of like normal fences and a gate, and so if you wanted to, you could keep all the sheep in that one field and they won't go wandering. There is a gate, and so you might want to keep it locked just for your own sanity. If you unlock it, you're on your own there, but I have made it purposely, so yeah, baby sheep will stay in their allocated spaces. But either way, moving over, as you can see, I've now moved on into the inside of the build. Started off by the initial like front door section, and now I've moved on into the kitchen. So like I said, yesterday we got 2 new kits, and one of them was a kitchen kit, but then also the second one was a workshop kind of kit. It's basically like the Sims team way of giving us a garage related kit without actually saying it's a garage related kit and without actually having the cars in the game, which is actually kind of funny in a way. But pretty much coming into this build, yeah, I knew that these 2 kits would be so perfect for this little like Welsh family farm. In the kitchen alone, from the 2 new kit DLCs, I had a choice of 2 different fridges. Now, the kitchen clutter kit is pretty much what it says. It is a kit that focuses on kitchen clutter, which, to be honest, I didn't actually think that we needed, but now I've seen the items, now they're in the game, it's lovely. It's really nice, which you will see in a second, but we got a fridge from the kitchen kit, but we didn't get a stove. But then from the workshop kit, we got a fridge, an oven, a microwave and a coffee machine. But the thing is about these different appliances is by default when you pull them out of the catalogue, they're minging, they're rusty, they're broken, and basically it's kind of giving you a bit of a gameplay initiative to fix them up to be working again. You might be able to see at some points when I turn the camera, but I've currently got the rusty microwave on the other side of the wall. But yeah, basically when you pull them out of the build and buy category, you have to basically fix them up. But luckily, if you've got the Better Build Buy mod installed and you can activate debug really easily in your game, you can just get the default items without them being broken. You can kind of see the microwave in the corner over there. But it's the same with the oven and the same with the fridge. But then with the kitchen clutter fridge, there is a swatch that's got like chickens on, it's got little pumpkins on and stuff, and I was just looking at it thinking, that is the most perfect fridge for this build. Like, you actually couldn't write it. And so yeah, in this kitchen I used the fridge from the kitchen clutter kit, but then the oven itself is from the workshop kit, but I just used an already fixed one, if you want to put it that way. It just looks like an older style oven, which I just really liked for this particular build, where I tried to make it feel a little bit of a older farmhouse. But then I also do place down the microwave on the opposite side of the wall. Like I said, currently it's a bit rusty, it's a bit minging, but I do end up replacing it and making it so it's ones that your Sims can actually interact with. But in terms of the kitchen clutter, I am just so obsessed with some of the items that came from this DLC. We've got a cookie jar, which you can see I placed down a kettle onto one of the kitchen counters because, of course, when you're going to make a cup of tea. But next to the kettle, I placed down this cookie jar. I didn't even know this when I was building, but in playtesting, I've realised that cookie jar is functional. And you can get your Sims to go up to it, click, grab a cookie, and then all of a sudden, they grab a cookie and they've got a little chocolate chip cookie on a plate in their hand. Small things. It's a small thing, but I just really appreciate that. But then also as well from this kit, we've got some like pantry style jars of like containers of like nuts and pasta and stuff. We've also got like a little grocery bag. We have like a hanging fruit basket. We've got kitchen scales, which I am so happy that we finally got kitchen scales in the game. For a while I've been using, you know, the Realm of Magic game pack. We've basically got some very magical looking scales from that DLC, and sometimes if I wanted to have like a little baker's kitchen or something, I'll use that and kind of try and pass it off as kitchen scales. But now we actually have them in the game. But then we also got like dish racks and little timers, and we've also got like little plants and utensils pots and knife blocks, and there is honestly so much cute stuff from this DLC. I can't lie, my first initial reaction when I heard that we was getting a kitchen clutter kit was, but we have already got so many different kitchen like clutter packs basically in the game. Because if you think about it, we've got the cool kitchen stuff pack, which came out in maybe like 2017, somewhere along that lines. But then after that, we got the country kitchen kit. So we've already got one kitchen related kit DLC in the game. But then after that, we got the Home Chef Hustle stuff pack. And then when I heard we was getting the kitchen clutter kit, I was thinking, but realistically, is it needed? Like, let's be real here. Is it actually needed? But some of the different decorations that we've got from this little kit DLC, no, I do think it is really cute. Like, it is really cute. I can't tell you whether I think you're going to enjoy it or not, but me, someone who decorates a lot of kitchens, yeah, I thoroughly enjoy this kit. But there is one thing that I didn't use in the kitchen, which I know I'm going to get so much use out of in future builds. I do try and use it in the bathroom, so you see it there, but we basically got like this backsplash thing where, you know, sometimes when you want to do wallpaper on a build and then maybe in the kitchen you want to have a little bit of tile, but then you can kind of see the top of the tile wallpaper through the cabinets and through the counters, and it's really annoying. We did get something like it from, if you're familiar with the Lovestruck expansion pack, but it was very colourful. And I have been saying since Lovestruck that I really wish that we got something that was a little bit more neutral, that I could get a little bit more use out of. But with the kitchen clutter kit, yeah, they gave us a neutral like backsplash tile that you can kind of layer behind your Sims kitchen cabinets. And it's a small thing, but for so many builds I'm going to get so much use out of that, and so I really appreciate it. Like I said, I don't use it in the kitchen purely because for the kitchen I knew from the get-go that I wanted to have kind of like a stony wallpaper where I wanted it to feel a little bit older on the inside of this house, but I do attempt to use it in the bathroom. Attempt being the key word, because I don't end up going for it, but you will see it shortly. But now moving over, I've moved on into the little tiny dining room. So in the dining room, I placed down the new cereal boxes that we got from the kit, which we did get a collection of 2 kind of like clusters of cereal boxes. I really wish the Sims team would have given us the cereal boxes as an individual item and not 2 of them together. It's still really cute, don't get me wrong, but sometimes you might just want to have like the odd one cereal box, and maybe sometimes if you wanted to do like a wall of different cereal boxes, like I'm picturing, say for example one day you want to build a pantry and you want to use like these new pantry containers and the jars that we got from the kit, and you wanted to maybe place down cereal boxes. It would just be quite nice if we just had like a one singular cereal box that you kind of like stack against each other to make it look like there was multiple. It's a small thing, but either way the cereal boxes are still really cute, and there is like a swatch of it where it looks like it's been opened and there's all like cereal on the table. It's really cute. But yeah, I'll place that down into the dining room, and then also in the dining room table I placed down a coffee mug and then also a book to make it look like the single dad that lives in this house, has been maybe like reading a newspaper or something. That is actually one clutter item that I really want in the game and we still haven't got it. But sometimes when I place down this one base game open book, I always picture in my mind that it's a newspaper. I know nowadays not a lot of people do actually read a newspaper, but older people do. And I mean, when I was younger, my first ever job, I was a paper girl, and so to me having a newspaper just feels quite nostalgic. And yeah, it's just the one individual clutter item that I still desperately want in the game is just a newspaper. And also if we could just get the return of having a newspaper or like a paper kid, you know, if you play The Sims 3 there'll be a little kid that will like ride around on their bike and they'd chuck you your newspaper. I want that in The Sims 4, but I don't know, I feel like at this point we wouldn't get it. But then saying that, we got burglars this year and we never thought we was getting them, even though they are quite annoying. But yeah, we have finally got burglars in the game. But anyway, besides the point, moving over, as you can see, I've now moved on into the lounge room. Now in here, admittedly, I actually really struggled with this room because it's a really big square and I just didn't know how to fill it out. Over here in the corner, I attempted to make a standing piano, because basically at one point I attempted to put one of the standing pianos that we've got in the game. We've got one from the Growing Together expansion pack, one from Horse Ranch, and then I think there might be another DLC where we have like a, you know, like an upright piano that's not as fancy as a ground one. But basically I tried to shove it in that corner, but the corner was just a little bit too tight for it. So I thought, do you know what, I'm going to try and make my own. And before we got the upright pianos, I always used to do this trick of merging in different side tables. And it is functional. Like when you do that, you can still make it to be functional. But the thing is, the curtains that I went for in this room, they are from the Growing Together expansion pack, but they're really annoying because sometimes you might place an object a little bit too close to it, and maybe it's to do with the mapping of the curtains, but then when you place down an object, sometimes the curtains will go a little bit black in the corners, and it's really frustrating. And it was happening in the corner where I tried to do like the little upright piano trick, and so in the end I called it a day and I just placed down a keyboard instead. But in this room I ended up placing down 2 3-seater sofas. The ones that I used are from the Cats and Dogs expansion pack. I then also have a big fireplace, which the fireplace is just from the Cottage Living DLC. And then over here I just have kind of like a little TV unit area. I did place down a coffee table in the middle of the room, kind of just to fit it out, but when I was filming I just completely forgot to furnish it. So if you can see when I spin the camera that the coffee table looks very lonely. I do eventually end up filling it up. You don't see it on camera, but I end up placing down, I think, a tea station. You know the ones that we got from My Wedding Stories where your Sims basically have like a little teapot and they can pour their mates like a cup of tea. I placed down one of them, and then I think also some open books, but a different open book to the one that I placed down in the dining room. But yeah, I do end up placing down some clutter onto the little coffee table. I just completely missed it somehow when I was filming. But over here, as you can see, you kind of go through this archway and you're almost back by the front door. But in this section, I just thought it'd be a really handy little corner to have some sort of like computer desk section. Now, one of my favourite new items that we got from the Restoration Workshop kit, which, can I just say, that kit is actually a mouthful to try and say, but from basically the garage kit, right? I might refer to it as the garage kit, but we got a fan. It sounds so silly, but but I love it because I don't know if it's just me, but it feels quite nostalgic to me to see some sort of like fan like that. We do currently have a few different fans in the game. Like we've got one from the Lovestruck expansion pack that hangs on the wall, and I think we've got one from the Get to Work expansion pack that's meant to go on like a computer desk or something. But we've got like a standing tall fan, and I don't know, I didn't even have that when I was a kid. My mum and dad would just like open the window. We didn't have, it wasn't, I don't know why, but to me it just makes it feel so nostalgic seeing it. I feel like it reminds me of like The Sims 2 or something. But either way, from the workshop kit, we did get a standing fan. So I just popped that into the little home office. But now moving on, I've actually now moved into the workshop of this build. Now, in terms of the different things that we got from the workshop kit, a lot of it, I must admit, is just purely for decoration, but I appreciate it because a lot of the times my Sims houses will have garages, and I use this one particular shelf, and I'm not sure if you're going to know which one I'm talking about, but we've got it from the StrangerVille game pack, and if I build a suburban family home and it's got a garage, 9 times out of 10, that one particular shelf from StrangerVille is going to be in the garage because in the game, we don't really have garagey looking items. Like, it's something that we're really lacking, and to be fair, it makes sense because we don't actually have cars in the Sims 4, but in terms of like just decorations for it, no, I'm really obsessed with this kit because I know personally I'm going to get so much use out of it. Currently over here, there's something that I need to speak about. You see, I've got that shelf on the wall, and then below it I've got what I was thinking was a woodshop table? No, what's it called? Woodworking table. You know, we got one from the Sims 4 base game. I knew that we got one from this new workshop kit, and I just assumed it was that table because, in all fairness, don't that look like some sort of wood table bench? It's not. That's actually just a side table. We did get one from the kit. Like, we did get a work bench, but I just didn't realise that it was a different object. And so you might notice in the screenshots that table is different because I actually swapped it out to be the actual one that your Sims can interact with. The one that I placed down is just a side table, but again, in my defence, if you was to look at it when I spin the camera, it does look like some sort of woodworking bench. But in here, I placed down pretty much all the different items that we got from the workshop kit. I didn't place down the oven, the fridge, the coffee maker, or the microwave just because I didn't feel like the dad that lives in this house would be restoring it. But of course, if you wanted to, maybe you don't like the fridge that I placed down into the kitchen and you want to place down the one that we got from the kit into the garage, and then over time, after he's done, you know, tending crops, feeding the cows, looking after the chickens, shearing the sheep, maybe of an evening the dad of his household could, yeah, restore the fridge if you fancy. But, you know, I just didn't place one down into that room, but I did place down like all the different shelving units and then also some of the different like little individual decorations from that DLC. But now moving on, as you can see, I've now moved upstairs into the bathroom. So in here, it's a fairly decent sized bathroom. I've got a shower, toilet, separate bathtub, and then a sink unit. The one thing that I didn't include though is a toddler potty, which I don't know if you would have realised, but downstairs when I was doing like the little dining room section, I made it so one of like the seating areas was going to be a high chair, and that's purely because I imagine that one of the Sims that lives in this house is an infant. Now, when infants are like fresh out of either CAS or maybe the womb, depending on how you play, but when you first get an infant in the game, they can't sit in a high chair, but through gameplay you can get it so infants can eventually sit up, and then you can get them to discover all these different types of baby foods and stuff. And so I was thinking that the infant that lives in this house is advanced enough, if you want to put it that way, to be able to sit up in a high chair. And so yeah, that's why there is a high chair downstairs. But then in terms of the toddler potty, I just forgot to add one in because they can't use a potty until they age up, but I forgot to add one in for when they do eventually age up. But of course, if that's something that you wanted to add, you can do so. But yeah, in terms of the family that live in this house, I really liked the idea of having a single dad and he's got 2 girls, one being, I was thinking around about 12, 13, that kind of age, and the other one being maybe about 8 months old or something. And then it really got me thinking about what could have potentially happened to the other parent. Now, initially, my mind went to, okay, well, maybe there was a fire at the farm, and, you know, something happened, something exploded, and then the other parent was kind of like in the aftermath of it. But then I thought that's kind of boring. And then my mind went to, well, what about if the other parent one morning was making everyone breakfast, you know, popped out to the chicken coop to go and get some extra breakfast and died from a chicken? Which I know that sounds very far-fetched, but I promise you that is something that can happen in the game. If you've got the Cottage Living expansion pack and you have chickens in your Sims garden, and for some reason you've got an angry chicken, which in my experience half the time that they're angry. Like, my Sims, I feel like they've got a really toxic relationship with their chickens because I try and interact with them, I try and be friendly, and they jump up in the air and they start flapping their wings. I get a little bit scared because I remember my first ever playthrough with the Cottage Living expansion pack. I built this one farm which it was actually, it's one of my first videos on Cottage Living. It was called like Huge Family Farm or something. But in that build, I made it so there was a couple different chicken coops. And at this point, I didn't really understand how chickens worked in the game. And I didn't realise that they're actually a bit annoying, but then also temperamental. And I remember I got my Sim to go into the chicken coop one morning, get some eggs, and this random chicken, I think it was the rooster, just had the ump, and for no reason just offed my Sim, and that was the end of my Sim's life. And I've never forgotten that. But yeah, I was just thinking that maybe the other parent of this household passed away from an angry chicken. Don't imagine that they've still got the chicken. I imagine that chicken is long gone, but I just thought it would be a bit of a different storyline for this family. But either way, moving over, as you can see, I've now moved on into what I was imagining to be like a 12 to 13-year-old room. Now, I'm not sure where you're going to stand on this, but I personally really want some sort of like pre-teen age in the game, because currently we've got children and then we've got teenagers, and there's like no middle ground in between. But when I was decorating this room, I was personally picturing that, yeah, the Sim that would sleep in this room would be around about 12, 13 years old or something. Because in my mind, I don't know how you look at it, but whenever there's a kid in the game, I always think they're about 8, 9 kind of thing. But then teenagers, I think they're like 16, 17 kind of age. I really wish there was some sort of middle ground, because when I was decorating this room, I was thinking, well, this Sim, you know, they've got a single dad. They probably help out their dad. They probably help tend to the farm work. But I didn't really imagine like an 8 to 9-year-old doing that. I was more so thinking it would be someone who is a little bit older than that. You can see I've currently placed down some magazines underneath the chest drawers. I'm not sure if I've done it yet, but I might do it in a second. But I ended up adding a lipstick next to the magazine, and in my mind I was thinking that was kind of like a pre-teenage kind of thing. I don't know about you, but when I was younger, I used to go to the little newsagents and I used to get different magazines, and sometimes the magazines ended up having like eyeshadow palettes or little like lip glosses and stuff, and so I added one in to that room thinking it was something like that. And to me it kind of helped kind of give the idea in my mind that it was kind of like a pre-teen rather than, you know, like an 8-year-old, if that makes any sense. But either way, now moving on, I've now moved on into the last bedroom of this house, and it is the dad's bedroom. So in here, I ended up going for the horse ranch double bed. In the previous bedroom, I completely spoke over it, but I did use a bunk bed that we got from Horse Ranch, which never used that one particular bunk bed, but it fitted the idea that I had in my mind. But yeah, for this room, I also used the bed that we got from Horse Ranch, but in here as well, I placed down a little wardrobe, placed down a bookcase. There is also a laundry basket, because in the garage, or workshop, whatever you want to class it as, but downstairs in that little section, I made it so it's got a washing machine and a tumble dryer. And in the upstairs bathroom, which, by the way, the second bathroom is downstairs, I just completely cut it out because it's pretty much the same as the upstairs bathroom, but in the bathroom up here there wasn't enough space to place down the laundry hamper, and so yeah, I just popped it into the dad's bedroom. But other than that, I'm going to go around, finish his bedroom off and quickly decorate the hallway, but that is pretty much it. So anyway guys, I'm going to end this voiceover right here. As always, you can download this build via the gallery. My gallery ID is JessicapieYT, or if you search for the hashtag JessicapieYT or just the hashtag Jessicapie. As always, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and as always, if you do like my content, then please do subscribe, and hopefully I will see you in my next Sims 4 speedrunning video. Bye guys.